I mean,
We're
could have been
literally.
worse. I could have worn a Liverpool shirt.
Welcome back to the Reverbian YouTube channel, not podcast. What a shock. My name is Jimmy, and to my
And
right is
I'm
the
Sean.
USA loving
Fuck
Sean.
off. Fuck off. No, 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 no,
He loves
no, no,
everything
no, no.
about the Super League, which is what we're here to
Oh, no,
talk about.
no, no, no. Don't you say that. Don't you dare.
Currently, the 19th of April 2021. So, any news that comes out after this date, we won't have obviously to us. But
It's during the evening of the 19th of April as well. We just want
we,
to say this because we're going to talk about what is true and factual and what's going on could quite quickly change in
yeah,
between us recording this and putting it out, and then people watching it.
yeah. So we decided to make this a separate video because this could be like an hour long in itself. It might not be. It could be like half hour, but it's a big topic, and we thought it'd
And
be
we just want
best.
to focus on it.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
we were going to do Falcon and the Winter Soldier for the podcast, so we're leaving that till then. We'll have other news from this
And who
week.
knows? So we'll probably have more to talk about this in the actual podcast anyway, because I imagine things will change and more things will come out during the week as well
Hmm.
that we'll be able to talk about.
Yeah, so we'll go over a bit of an overview of what has happened. Yesterday, it was announced that six Premier League teams, along with six other teams across Europe, have like basically confirmed they will be taking part in a European Super League that is being set up by um, a bunch of the chairmen of different clubs around Europe.
So the chairman of the Super League is the Real Madrid chairman,
Yeah,
and then there are four co-vice chairmen, which is Liverpool, Man United.
disgraceful.
Um, oh, who are the other three? The other two?
Juventus.
I think it's Juventus.
Hmm.
But I can't remember the fourth one, if I'm honest.
It's fine. If I find it, we'll get back
Yeah.
to it. But yeah, that came out. UEFA came out. FIFA came out. Joint statement. All these different bodies came out. Basically said if this goes through, all these the teams and the players would be banned from UEFA tournaments. The players would be banned from playing for their international teams, so no Euros and no World Cup, which is a bit unfair on the players. We'll get to that. Just it may not happen, even though all of this news is coming out. It still may not happen, but these teams and the owners of these teams specifically have set themselves up for heavy criticism, especially if there is a failure in the plans.
I think I'll get into it a bit more later, but with
Mm-hmm.
the statement of joining the Super League, each team also put out a statement that they had left the ECA,
Mm.
which basically means they can't enter into any UEFA competitions. So we'll talk about the ramifications of that probably a bit later when we discuss some other things, because
Yeah,
that could be quite huge.
I'll
The fact that
list. Go on, go.
it's the fact that they've already said that they've left as well, not that they will intend to leave. The fact that on the same day they've gone, they've not even waited to see any backlash or anything, that straight away they've left is quite huge.
I'll list every team that will be involved currently. We have Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Manchester City, Manchester United, Tottenham Hotspur, Inter Milan, Juventus, AC Milan, Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, and Real Madrid. Reportedly, three more teams will be joining that, but these haven't been confirmed yet. But some teams that have reportedly declined are Porto, Paris Saint Germain, Bayern Munich, and Borussia Dortmund. But they could still go back on that. There's no word.
They could, but it is interesting. So I think also what the format is, what they proposed, we should probably go over that as well,
Hmm.
is there'll be 20 teams in this league. Uh, Currently, with the 12 founding members plus the three additional that are supposedly joining, will always be in this league. They will always qualify no matter what, no matter what they do in domestic competitions, anything like that. They will always be in this competition. And the final five spots will then be made up of teams from the leagues in Europe based on their performance. Um, I think they've massively messed up here, because when you look over the format, obviously, the only thing I can assume is that obviously, let's say the 5 teams that have the chairman and the co-vice chairman of this Super League wanted this to happen, and they must have assumed that 3 other teams, which I would say off the top of my head were PSG, Bayern Munich, and Borussia Dortmund. They assumed they would join them, which is why they had this 15 team.
Apparently, one of the teams is Leipzig, that they think is going to join. Another team is some Saudi team. Not surprised.
I'm talking about before now. When they first came up with this, which is why they set up the 15 team founding, because they would have gone, right, these are the 15 biggest teams currently in the Champions League. They'll join us. And I think it's come back to bite them in the arse a bit that they haven't agreed to it, because now it almost seems as if they're frantically looking for 3 more teams. As it slowly comes out that other teams are saying no, you're then kind of left wondering, well, who are these other 3 teams going to be? And it then kind of goes against what they originally proposed of being like the bigger teams, because how far down the lead do you go of inviting these teams? Like, do they start going after more Premier League teams? Like, do they start asking Leicester? Do they start asking Everton? Do they start asking teams like Sevilla in Spain, or Napoli, or like the ones who have to actually qualify for the Champions League every year and aren't, because there are teams obviously like Juventus and your Man Cities and your Barcelona and Real Madrid who every year you expect them to be in those positions to qualify, and then there's other teams that are in and out of the competition. It'll be interesting to see how far down those lists they go of then now trying to invite these teams to try and make up those 15.
I can confirm as well that the final vice chairman we didn't list was Stan Kroenke. Is his name Kroenke? Arsenal's owner. Yeah. 3 Americans are in charge. Oh,
no surprise.
No surprise. Look at that shirt, Sean. Look at that shirt you're wearing.
It's a jumper, but
yeah.
But yeah, so I think that pretty much covers exactly what we know, as in format-wise, what's been announced, where the position of everyone stands at the moment. Last night, I think Twitter just seemed to go into a huge meltdown of things being confirmed as breaking news that maybe shouldn't have been, and people were taking rumours as actual news of what would happen to these teams if there's any like punishments to them. I saw points reductions being said about the teams not being allowed to play in their league competition, so the Premier League and the Liga competition like that, they'll be kicked out, and if they were to rejoin, they'd have to start from the bottom. A whole host of the current Champions League being suspended, and the teams who had opted into the Super League would be immediately kicked out, which would only actually leave 1 team.
That's what PSG's plan is. Wait until everything blows over and then join.
None of this has been confirmed, but there's a lot that people are speculating could happen and what might happen. So it'll be interesting to see in the next few days what does get confirmed and decided by each football association and these different governing bodies on what they choose to do. I think obviously the other thing is that all the football associations, so FIFA, UEFA, the English FA, Spanish FA, Italian FA, they've all come out and said they oppose to this as well, that they don't support it in any way, and basically would do everything they can to stop it.
UEFA came out with a statement saying it was all greed, it was all corruption, and then I'm looking back and saying, so what's UEFA?
Yeah, it's a bit ironic, but so even Boris Johnson's come out and said that he condemns it and will try and stop it, which when you go...
honestly,
when Johnson has to get involved...
Honestly, he might actually be the reason it stops. Because I think he probably would have power to govern over the UK, the UK teams, so the English teams. But I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know where they stand, because obviously they're privately owned businesses, aren't they? At the end of the day, so And I
Brexit
think
means
this is,
Brexit, Sean.
but I think this is the issue we'll get to as well, is that um, it appears that this is the first step in franchising football, which
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if these owners really want to do this, there is nothing, because as I said, they are privately owned businesses, there is nothing to stop them relocating the teams. So it's all good saying that like the governments of these countries could actually stop them. At the end of the day, if let's take FSG for example, if they decide they still want to go ahead with this, but they're going to be blocked from playing it if they're in England, there is nothing to stop them moving the team to America, which could happen.
I think
Because
that would be reason for murder in this country if any of the teams went over. I think their lives would be at stake.
So
I would never enter England ever again if I was them.
So we see it a lot of the time in NFL where a team will relocate to a different city and different state for financial reasons. So, and because obviously, as we've said, a lot of these owners, especially for the English clubs, are Americans. They're obviously used to this system, and it's one that effectively they've grown up with. Let's say that it's not out of the ordinary for them to do something like that. So that could be where this heads. If we don't know for certain if that's what they're planning to do.
The Glazers that have put the club into billions of debt want to relocate. I don't think they can actually afford that. I don't think they can actually. I think they'd have to stay. So I'm not sure, but it's an individual basis. I'd like to.
Also, I was just say. Also, what we can say is that it was said that every founding member would also benefit from like a 3.5 billion like payout to them.
That's the enticing part, isn't it? For all these,
it's absolutely ridiculous. And
where's this money coming from?
Well, they're being backed by JP Morgan, and obviously they have a fair amount of money. And I think obviously if they do go ahead with it, even with all the backlash, it will still make money, which is why they're probably willing to do this. But it's interesting as well because they came out and said that they're doing this to basically move away from the Champions League and UEFA because they don't like what they're doing, and that apparently they're not doing enough to help like the lower leagues of football. And they're saying that this move is something to do that and to help the lower leagues and lower teams. But they haven't said anything of like what they would do for that. I think if you're going to make a statement like that, you've got to come out with facts of going, we're going to do this. Like we're making the competition, and to benefit everybody, we're going to do this. You can't just come out and say, "Oh, we'll do it," because at the end of the day, no one's going to believe you.
Yeah.
And it just makes it look even more like we're just in this for the money, which they are. Let's put that. This is all a big money move for the owners to make themselves more money and guarantee themselves more money. And
they don't give a shit about the fans.
Yeah, and it's at the end of the day, I think it'll just be a broken promise of we're going to help lower leagues, and they won't. They'll probably put a little bit into it, but not what it needs. Nothing more than what the current situation already does.
Well, I'll say this now. I personally am not against some form of midweek Super League that replaces the Champions League, or the Champions League evolves into a sort of league-based thing. But I am not at all a fan of the money-grabbing, clearly corrupt way this has gone about, with no with no relegation system really for any of the teams that are starting in United's never going to get relegated, Liverpool's never going to get, as much as I want United to always be at the top of everything, they shouldn't be if they're playing shit. If United came last, they should be relegated from this, and it's not going to happen, which it just shows what's the point? It's not, you're not proving that how are Tottenham and Arsenal up there with the best teams in the world? Tottenham are 7th, Arsenal are 9th in the league currently. They're not even top 5.
So Arsenal haven't won a league title since 2004. Tottenham
Tottenham
haven't since
haven't.
the 70s, or they haven't at all.
Well,
Or
they
like the
haven't won
last
a Prem
trophy was in the
title, to
70s
be
or
fair.
something stupid
Yeah.
like that. It's like, and they're being considered for this. Yes, obviously, like in the past few
Bring in
seasons, Spurs
Leicester.
have been in the Champions League, but
Yeah.
they've not really earned their place there. The same as AC Milan. They haven't done anything in Serie A for God knows how many years, and they've earned their place there.
If they
It's like,
proposed this and said it was the top 4 teams currently and the top four, whatever, for each country that was getting allocated. I don't know how England has 6 teams. Um, but if they'd done that and they said next season it'll be different, you know, but still do like this league-based format that's midweek, I'd be totally fine with it. I actually find that quite interesting. It's while I like the Champions League, it can become a bit stale, and something to switch it up is good, but not in the way they're doing it.
yeah, it's interesting as well that this announcement came literally days before UEFA were to announce a revamp of the Champions League. We spoke about it previously on a podcast that they're announcing this new 36-team competition, which would be comprised of a big league system and involving extra fixtures, which wasn't great. So it is interesting they've done it at this time. I think that's obviously a big reason why, to try and stop that and to kind of show this is something different. We're doing this. But yeah, it's not. They haven't gone about it the right way. So as well, I'm all for a revamping of a European competition to improve it. Exactly how that would be, I'm not entirely sure. Hadn't really put too much thought into it, but he said this isn't the way to go about it. Ensuring that your team earns so much more money than any other team in your domestic league a season is ridiculous. Ensuring that you're always playing in this competition when you might not deserve it is ridiculous. And they can try and spin it however they want. At the end of the day, this is greed, and that's all it is. Like, there's nothing they can say that would prove this isn't the case. It is all just about making more money for themselves and cementing themselves in that top place to continue earning that money. Because if you look at the teams involved, we'll just take the Premier League for a start. Only 2 of them currently are in the top 4, which is both the Manchester teams. You have Chelsea in 5th, you have Liverpool in 6th, Tottenham in 7th, and Arsenal in 9th. Basically, what's gone on here is that the owners of these teams, over the past few years, have seen the gaps close from the teams below them and are actually challenging them for once, and they're shitting themselves. They're absolutely shitting themselves that they might not stay at the top. And I think especially for teams like Arsenal, who, as I said, haven't won a league title since 2004 and have struggled for many years and are having a bad time over the past few years with manager changes and just not performing how they should be, they're shitting themselves. They're going to slip. I think it's the same with other teams. Probably what's pushed it quicker this season is that FSG have probably seen that Liverpool have gone all the way from a fantastic, amazing run of winning the league to 6th and struggling to get back into the Champions League for this season. They're shitting themselves going, well, we can't guarantee that we're going to be in that position anymore, so we need to do something to sort it. Real Madrid and Barcelona aren't running off ahead with La Liga. Atletico are ahead of them. Admittedly, Atletico are joining as well, but they're shitting themselves because Sevilla's only 1 point behind Barcelona as we stand this season. Admittedly, Barca have a game in hand, but other teams have been challenging them this season, and early on this season they were. And as I said before, in Italy, where the other 3 teams are coming from, AC Milan until this season have done nothing for about 10 years. So they're trying to find a way to cement themselves because they've been challenged in recent years by Napoli, Atalanta. Juventus have been doing awful this year. I'd say awful, they're 4th. But compared to the dominance they've had over the recent years, they're now shitting themselves going, other teams are challenging us. The owners of Inter Milan are probably shitting themselves because they're losing money. They've had to shut down one of their other teams that they owned because they're running out of money. So they
That's
need
what
to do
that
something.
3.5 billion's for.
So they've got to secure some money for themselves and make sure that they can still stay afloat. It's obvious that it's purely money based. They don't give a shit about the fans at all, about what they want, what football means. It's ridiculous.
It's something. It's definitely. I don't know. We should probably bring up the fact that we don't know 100% if it's related or not. It's most likely not. But Jose Mourinho was also sacked from his job as manager of Tottenham Hotspur early this morning. I believe it was this morning.
Yeah.
And there was a rumour going around that he took a stand against the Super League and refused to go out for training, refused to take the players out. Apparently that's a lie, that's not true. And he was just sacked based on the results that Tottenham are currently getting and their position in the league, and probably the fact that maybe he might have had in his contract some sort of clause that says he's owed this amount of money if he wins a trophy. So if they ended up winning this final and still finished in a crap position, they would have had to pay out. So they thought maybe we'll get rid of him now.
I also think Daniel Levy probably used this as he probably thought this is a great time to do it because people would be more focused on the Super League, that he could probably get rid of Mourinho without the sole focus being on Mourinho leaving. Because at the end of the day, he's been sacked and it's still not the biggest news item out there. It was spoke about briefly this morning, but anything that gets mentioned about it quickly then gets followed up by more talk about the Super League. So it's probably also he saw it as an opportunity of we can get rid of him here and it will almost be covered up because their attention will be focused elsewhere.
Well, we talked about briefly before the podcast, not in the podcast, the video started, that a lot of people have been saying on Twitter, all these sort of formats, like coming after these teams particularly, and the players and the managers, without really thinking about the fact that none of the players or the managers were informed of this. It's literally the owners and the owners alone. Klopp came out and said a few things, which I will allow you to talk about if you want to talk about.
Yeah, so as we talk now, Liverpool are currently playing Leeds in the Premier League. And obviously, this was a huge topic for Monday Night Football before the game started. And obviously, they were going to want to question Klopp about the whole situation. He came out in 2019 because this idea about Super League has been floating around for quite a few years. In 2019, he came out and said he opposed this idea and that he hoped it never happened. He was questioned on that again. He's turned and said that his feelings haven't changed. He's still against it. And he also said that he wasn't consulted. The players weren't told. They found out when everyone else found out when the statement was issued last night. He did take fire a shot at Leeds because they had left a T-shirt saying "Football is for the fans" in their dressing room, and stated how he thought that was unfair as it had nothing to do with him or his players. It is the people above him,
which is fair.
The players shouldn't be attacked.
It's funny, but it's fair.
Yeah, but they haven't made this decision, which I think is right. But I do think, personally for me, I would have liked him to come out with a stronger statement. Obviously, I wouldn't want him to leave the club. It would be a huge blow for him to leave the club. But it would have been huge if he had come out and said, if this goes ahead, I'll leave, or something along those lines, or make some sort of stronger statement of, I do not agree with this. I would not want to be manager as this. Something to show that he's well and truly against it. Obviously, I do understand that he's in a difficult position. At the end of the day, there are the people that are paying his wages. There's obviously a lot of uncertainty that where would he go if they could turn around and sack him on the spot, or if he came out before the game and went, I don't agree with this, I won't manage this club into this competition. After this game, he'd probably be gone, and then he'd be left nowhere. I shouldn't imagine he'd struggle to find a job because he's a great manager, and there'll be teams out there.
Maybe
who don't.
maybe the Munich job as well.
I don't know if he'd go there because of Dortmund, though. I don't know. But yeah, there would be teams who aren't in this competition who would obviously take him at some point. But I would have preferred a stronger statement from him. It's interesting that no current players of these teams have come out and said anything yet. Many ex-players or players of teams who weren't invited to be in this competition have come out and spoke out against it, but none of the players themselves who are part of these teams have, which at the moment is quite interesting. It'll be interesting to see after this game, because after they usually do their man of the match interviews. One, if they'll take place, and two, if they do, what will be said. I imagine they'll be fairly similar to Klopp's situation, where they won't really say much because they'll have been told not to, and again, of fear of them losing their jobs if they speak out against it. But I think it's. I've spoken about this with quite a lot of people today. I think it's the only way this is going to stop is from the players if they refuse to play. But obviously, there's a lot of technicalities into that. I think as fans, we can obviously do a lot to help stop it. So obviously, make your voice heard that you're against it if you are. But at the end of the day, there'll still be people out there who will still watch the games, who may even see this as an opportunity to try and actually get to see the teams that they wouldn't normally see, because there'll be a lot of people not willing to give their money to the owners. And I think there's a large majority of fans from other countries who probably would push for this and want to see these games more often. Ones who probably aren't as involved in, let's say, like the English football pedigree, that sort of thing. And yeah, who would still line the owners' pockets with money. So I think it's going to be a lot down to the players on what they come out and say, what they come out and do if they oppose this. And hopefully enough of them would do it to the point where the owners of the clubs then realise that this competition won't actually have any quality to it, because the only players they could attract would be players of less quality who are just in it for a quick cash grab, that they'll try and get themselves a paycheck, but the standard then won't be as high and the competition won't be as lucrative as it set out to be.
Yeah, or one of the things that I have been thinking about is there are players like Rashford, Harry Kane, who are prominent features in the national teams. How are they going to feel about being told, you're not allowed to play, you'll be banned, you'll never be able to play for your national team again? Are they going to stand for that? I wouldn't. But also, this is where, while I'm kind of on UEFA's side on the fact that there shouldn't be a Super League, I think they're being a bit harsh on the people that are like the players, the managers, rather than the owners themselves. Like you're saying if your team is in this Super League, your players can't play for the international competitions. Why are the teams going to care? It's going to be the players that care more.
But I think that's what they're probably trying to aim to do.
Yeah, I get it.
They'll try and rally the players against the teams of Turin and go that they'll either try and move to teams that aren't involved in this, or will just refuse to play, because they know that, I think UEFA and FIFA understand that they can't really touch these owners. I think that's the issue, is that they are so big and so powerful and have so much money, is that they won't care if their players can play international or not. So they're going to have to do something to make the players act, because that's where the change is going to happen. Then they can enforce whatever ban they want on these teams. They can come out and say, you're not allowed to play in your domestic competition, you can't play in this. The owners will go, okay, we have our Super League, we'll play in that, we'll get money from this. So they've got to. It doesn't seem right, because it's not the players' fault, but I think they're doing the right thing and going after the players to try and get the players to act, because that's where the change will happen.
Yeah, that's where I get it. It's just I don't necessarily like it, but it's something that might be necessary to stop it. Um, but it just ruins the sense of competition in football. That's the point of all these tournaments like Champions League, Europa League. It's a competition. Super League's just a dick measuring competition against a bunch of the big teams, big teams in Europe, and that's it. Like I don't.
It's pretty amazing how up until 24 hours ago, we thought that VAR would be the thing to kill off football, and it's just there's always going to be a bigger fish. But there's always something else.
We've talked about this a lot. Like you said before, we had a podcast on the concept and stuff like this. Go back and watch it. But it's not until today that you realize how severe this could be. You know how damaging to football this could be, and not just to the teams that leave if it fails, but the teams that are left in these leagues. The Premier League losing 6 of the biggest clubs in its history ever. Like,
would be huge. And
I talked to some other people about this as well, and they were like, "Oh, it'll be fine. People will watch their clubs if." But I'm like, "Yeah, but you're losing 6 of the biggest fan bases in football, like just in the Premier League alone."
So I think this is the problem as well. Is that I've said this to a few people as well. So we're both obviously fans of teams that are in this. Myself, Liverpool. Obviously, you, Man U, with the top in the background. I think it doesn't help because it's only been under 24 hours of what's going on. We don't know exactly what's going on, but it does put you in a very difficult position of that you oppose this league. You don't want to support anything to do with this league, but you've also spent your entire life of all you've known is supporting this team, and you can't just turn that off. So it does put you in a horrible position.
I will still support United no matter what. Doesn't mean I have to agree with it though. And it's the same with a lot of things.
But then it does put you in an awkward position of you can turn and go, oh, I want to support them in the Super League, but I'll still support them in the Premier League. But the Super League affects the Premier League. And if you're still like watching games, you're still putting money into their pockets. If you're buying a kit, you're putting money into their pockets. If you turn up to a Premier League game and watch it in the stadium, you're still putting money in their pockets. So you're still supporting them in some way.
That's why you illegally stream, Sean. No, you don't. Oh, you froze there.
Yeah, you froze me too.
Oh, I said that's why you illegally stream, and then we got shut down. Then the feds came for us. Yeah. I don't know. It's a bit like I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh, I'm never supporting United again." I'm not watching the Super League if it happens. I'll be watching probably. I'll still support my club, but I'm not planning on going to games. I wouldn't have done it anyway, probably the way the world is at the moment. But I don't have to agree with the situation, and it's just a nightmare. We've been lumped in and been forced into a situation as fans to either sit here and say, we're not supporting this team anymore, or we're going to go and support another team, or we just got to sit here and hope something happens, or hope that our voices are heard in some way to be able to counteract this proposed league. I don't even know if you can call it proposed anymore, because I don't know if the proposal has been.
They were planning to start it in August.
Yeah.
So, and as I said we'll get onto it. The teams have left the ECA. It means they can't play in European competitions. Obviously, we don't know what that means for the ones left in the Champions League and Europa League for this season, whether they'll continue in the competition or if they will get kicked out immediately. It does mean that as it stands, they cannot join the Champions League next year because they're not a part of the ECA. So it does mean that, well, if we quickly look at let's again take Premier League for example. So it means that Man City and Man United, who sit first and second, won't be in it. So that puts Leicester, West Ham, and then we move all the way down to 8th for Everton and 10th for Leeds, who currently will have a Champions League spot because they'll lose those. So that's
it's
huge
something. It's huge no matter
ramifications.
what happens, and also it's crazy to think that even if the European Super League doesn't happen, I still think these teams won't be in the Champions League next year. I don't think we're getting anything. There's no way they're joining back, at least this soon.
So that'll be the interesting thing. If there is enough of a backlash that they go back on it and they decide not to, what then happens? Like, are they allowed to rejoin? Do they get punished and go no? Either you're not coming back in ever, because I know there were, along with one of those rumours, it was that apparently UEFA were attempting to strip these teams of any titles they've won previously, which I don't think you can really do.
That's a load of bullshit. I disagree on that, because you can't take away that from the players and the fans just because the owners are greedy, you know.
But it would also look bad on UEFA's part if these teams did go back on themselves and then they welcomed them back and went, okay, come back to our competition. You're free to come back. It may be that it'd be a few years for them to come back in, but then at that point, the teams may well decide that, oh, we'll do it anyway because we're not going to be in this competition, so might as well go ahead with it. And I think it would then obviously be interesting to see just what would happen if they do decide not to go ahead with it. Like, how far has it gone already in everything? Because, just will fans go back? Is it already too late for most fans that they've already decided, that's it, I'm done? Because a lot of people who have turned and said that they're done with it. Will they stick to that? And will there be any punishments for it, for what they've done? There's a lot of unanswered questions. Obviously, we're still early on in this.
But it's something we needed to address. And we thought it'd be better to do it now rather than wait until the podcast and only have like a small segment of it. Like now we've done it's nearly 40 minutes of a video here just talking about this.
And I hate to say it as well, but I think even if the owners do decide to not go ahead with it because of any backlash or anything, I don't think it'll be the end of this. I think in a few years' time they'll come back and try again. And I think sadly it will eventually happen in one way or another. Because they'll keep trying. Because they've shown that they're willing to do it. So I don't see why they'll back down, and if this doesn't work, then they'll go, okay, we'll never try this again. I'm adamant that if it doesn't work this time, they'll come back in a few years' time and go again.
They're lucky there aren't fans at the stadium.
Yes, yeah.
It would, especially United back in. I don't know if you remember when the Glazers came in, and everyone's posting "fuck the Glazers" stickers everywhere. Like when I went to Old Trafford a long time ago now, there was just like walls plastered with these anti-Glazer stickers, like "get them out, Glazers out," and that's never stopped. Like while the stickers have stopped, the trend of Glazers out has not, and rightly so. I wouldn't say they've ruined the club, but they've taken this club and made it all about money, whereas it used to be a big club based around like attacking football, entertaining football. The fans now it relates to Liverpool as well. Just seems all of these foreign owners, these American owners, the Saudi owners, all of the rich men in football have come in and ruined the sport that we once loved. I'm not going to sit here and say football's dead. Maybe it is, but like it's hard to get your thoughts out all at once about this because we don't know where it's going to lead. B, we don't know if it doesn't even lead anywhere, what are the repercussions of the actions already taken? And will we see fans maybe band together to... I mean, it'd be hard to buy out these clubs, but like, are we going to just let the Glazers take over? We're going to let FSG take over, all of these clubs be run by this tyrannical dictatorship rule.
Before we recorded this, I was watching Monday Night Football. Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher are on there talking about it, and Carragher made a great point of the reason FSG came into Liverpool is because the fans ran out the previous owners because they weren't happy on how the club was being run. So it's very easy for them to do it again, and they could do it again if this isn't back down. We have Liverpool fans have obviously history of doing that. It's the reason FSG are here, so there's no reason why it couldn't happen again. Which, given what they've tried to do, I'll be more than happy for that to happen. So they've given us some great years, and they've brought the club a long way. But this just isn't what Liverpool is, and I think when that happens, if you don't want, you've got to try and do everything you can to get rid of that, because you want to try and bring someone in who won't go after this and who can try and stop it. I do also want to say, as we've been talking, Sevilla have announced that they won't be joining the Super League either, and have no interest in that kind of project. So that's another team that has opposed it.
Surprised Sevilla got asked, to be fair.
I guess that maybe they were.
Yeah.
So it might not be that they have physically actually been asked, but we may see just a string of teams who probably know they're a potential target. If these other 3 spaces aren't filled, that will come out and go, don't approach us, we're not interested, and almost say it before they come to them and go, we have no interest, don't bother talk to us about it, we won't do it.
I'm excited to see them put a team outside of Europe in, and people be like, well, what's the point of a Super European League?
Yeah.
I mean, I already mentioned the Saudis, technically they're not European, and they may be going in, like they may have a team there. But I don't know. Who do you... I'm putting this question here as maybe a bit of a hypothetical, but who do you think will be part of this free team inclusion, if there is going to be a team? And I already said Leipzig as one of them potentially. That's one that I've heard rumoured.
But I've also heard that they've said no, which is quite interesting. But they're ones I would have said. I don't know. I haven't seen anything from Ajax either way yet. Obviously, I feel like they would be probably one of the teams to target from being obviously like the biggest Dutch team. I think all of the French league teams have said that they wouldn't, so I believe all of them have said no. Obviously, we know PSG definitely. I'm not sure about the teams of like Lyon and Marseille, whether they were asked and have said no.
I'd imagine Lyon might have been asked, but I don't know.
Apart from that, I don't really know where they go, because
Turkey, Belgium.
The thing, they can do that, but I feel like the reason they were forming this league is to try and get away from those teams. In a way, of they don't want to be playing teams like Spartak Moscow or Shakhtar Donetsk or Fenerbahce.
Well, so
they don't want.
I don't think Spartak. Did you see the tweet?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's funny. Go look it up if anyone hasn't seen it.
Team I could think of. But yeah, I think that's obviously another reason for it, is that they don't want to play teams like that anymore, because they know that playing those teams don't bring as much money. They don't get as many views. Whereas if they can guarantee they're playing teams like, say, if Liverpool can play teams like Real Madrid and Barcelona every week or every other week, that they'll bring in more views. So yeah, I don't know who they go to at this point. After this, it'll be interesting to see.
Well,
or whether they give in on their own format and they change it so they have 12 founding teams and 8 qualifying places. Whether they change that,
again,
who knows?
The qualifying places, who's going to go? If all these teams are saying no, who's going to fill up those qualifying? They haven't really. It's like they've just send out invitations and hope people just show up. It's like sending them out to a birthday party and having your friend and the clown show up.
And that's why I said I think they messed up at the beginning of that. They anticipated that they would have these other teams support them, and they haven't, and it could make them look really stupid. I also think it could be interesting that what countries do they go to for these qualifying places? There's obviously only 5 ones, so I'd assume they'd go to their own country. So we're looking at England, Spain, Italy. I'd assume they were thinking France in the first place, thinking PSG would join them, and then maybe one of either Portugal or if it was to be Ajax, maybe the Dutch league, something like that. But then, so if again we'll go back to the Premier League. Let's say, for example, these 6 teams all finish in the top 6 of the league next year.
Yeah.
You've then got this Super League that has the 7th place team or the 7th best team from that country now in this competition, which that's surely then a worse quality than actually having a champion from a different country. It's counterproductive. So I think we could go on like this for a long time.
Yeah, I was just reading
different stuff, and
I was just reading up on a bit of news to do with the government, which we've already touched on, and the fact that they're trying to block the English teams from it. And I saw someone talk about moving English teams to fan ownership models and stripping the rights from these independent parties. Whether that will go down, whether they can even do that, would be interesting. I feel like they could. And even if they did, I think the government would have enough power to maybe not completely get rid of these teams, but strip them of the names. Like Manchester United currently would no longer be Manchester United and set up a new team, but give them the history of the old team. So this is the new Manchester United. This and that's just Manchester Reds owned by some American twats, you know? Like,
so
how
I think
would
the
they
problem
do
would
that?
come. That would be a great model to show, and obviously it's showing that it works. Is they have it in the Bundesliga for the majority.
That's the
There's some
example I saw,
teams
yeah.
like Leipzig who aren't following that rule, but I think that is one of the main reasons why teams like Bayern and Dortmund haven't agreed to this, is because they have this 51% fan ownership. I think the problem you'd face of trying to implement that now with these teams is that the people who currently own them could outprice them. They could just turn and go, no, I'm not accepting this amount, and then these fans have got to try and generate even more money from somewhere to try and put towards it, and they could just keep saying no, and not accepting it and keeping this team. That they just have so much power at the moment that it seems as though nothing could
You're
actually
gonna
stop
have
it.
to raise a lot of money. Like, you're gonna have to raise 3.5 billion euros to get this. Never mind. Like, but I genuinely think, while a lot of people might say it's a bit of a waste for the government to maybe chip the money in to buy these big clubs away, I don't, because it's such a big part of our culture. It's such a big part of England
Tourism,
specific
it brings in
tourism.
so much money that
If we can
the
put all
teams
this
that we
money in the
have.
royal family, and we can put some money into football in this way.
So I think we've got to look at is that obviously, as I mentioned earlier, there is this danger of these teams being relocated if they choose to, if they want to, they could do that any time. So with these being such huge teams, and they would bring a lot of money to the country through tourism for fans wanting to come and just see the stadium, see where the team is, either coming to games, away fans in the Champions League, travelling, all these sort of things. So like flights, accommodation while they're here, everything like that. It brings in a ton of money, and they could potentially lose out on that. So there is obviously an interest from the government to do something about this.
Yeah.
Which is a bit promising that they would try and do something. And I think it is just a time where everybody needs to try and band together and do as much as they can to make their voices heard that we're against this, we don't want it to happen, and do everything we can to stop it from happening.
Well, I personally see the government intervention. I think they could succeed if they can block the English teams at the very least, which is what they care about. We don't care about the other teams. But if they block the English teams from being able to do this, then these teams, well, the owners might be forced to sell the teams. Like, if they're not getting this, especially like the Glazers, who are how much in debt, they're probably using this European Super League to pay off this debt and then have a few billion left over afterwards. So, like, if we're if we can block the English teams, I think that'll capitulate the whole thing, or at least postpone it for another year. Like, it won't be happening in August, I personally think. I think they're being a bit optimistic with it, especially if they can't get another 3 teams. How they're going to get another 5 on top of that from these qualifying leagues? I don't see it happening, and I don't expect it to happen. And I expect these clubs to see major change. And I don't if it does change and there's new ownership, like Liverpool gains new owners, United gains new owners, I think people should be a bit forgiving on the clubs themselves. Don't forgive the Glazers, don't forgive FSG, but forgive the club. Like, I think UEFA themselves should, if this is the case and the new owners come in, I think UEFA should be a bit forgiving and be like, all right, you're new owners, we're out of the old. Maybe make them sign contracts saying they can't do this shit again. Like, maybe even as long as the rest of the football league follows on, like, you can't do this shit again, because it's a nightmare. And maybe at the same time, UEFA need to sort their shit out as well. Whether they do or not, completely different and probably irrelevant to this, but I don't know. I think we'll see a shift in football and see this fan based model, fan ownership, come in some form, whether it's forced or whether like forced from government intervention, or whether the backlash is so harsh, which it has been, but not to the level. Well, it has been to that level, but not to the level where it will impede the goings of this Super League. But it's kind of a waiting game. There's not much we can personally do about it. Like, me and you sitting here, we're doing something about it now, talking about it openly.
Oh, yeah.
This is as much we can do. Like, we haven't got any influence in football. We aren't full-time journalists. We're just people on YouTube who are making YouTube videos. And we're specifically going to clickbait this title. Whether it gets views or not, we will see. Well, it's not clickbait. We'll just make sure people know what we're talking about. But I don't know. There's only so, I feel like I've said I don't know a lot, but it is a lot of I don't knows. We didn't expect this news to be such a big thing. We expected something to come out, but not 12 teams have signed on. They've all left the ECA. This is happening in August. Football might be dead. They might not be able to play in all of these other tournaments. They might be kicked out of the domestic leagues. Yeah.
Yeah. So as I said, it's going to be an interesting few days and few weeks coming up on what happens. Be interesting as and when players of these teams come out and say something. As we get to the weekend and the other teams involved have games, so what the other managers come out and say, I imagine all of it will be fairly similar to what Klopp has come out and said, of fairly reserved.
I don't think Solskjaer will be in support of it.
So I don't think they'll be in support of it, but
Tottenham doesn't have a manager.
It's again the situation of how much can they say, how much can they oppose it, because they need to. At the end of the day, they don't want to lose their jobs. So
we may even see players secretly behind the scenes band together and then boycott. You may they may not be saying anything now because they're planning something.
This might be why no one's come out and said anything, because obviously we've seen previously with obviously the COVID situation that players got together behind the scenes to issue a statement with what was going on and how they felt. For we know this could be happening now. The players from different teams are discussing and trying to form a group to be able to make it then a statement as a group. But yeah, I think we've probably said as much as we can at the moment without going into ridiculous speculation on what could and couldn't happen.
Yeah.
So I think it's more waiting on what actually gets announced in the near future.
Well, if we get any updates this week, or well, any week, but if we get any updates this week, we will talk about them in the podcast. So join us on Friday, well, Saturday possibly, maybe late Friday night or Saturday morning. Either one, we'll see when we get to record it. We are leaving it a day later because we are going to be talking about Falcon and the Winter Soldier when it comes out, the final episode. So yeah, that'll be our focus. We'll also go over some other news that we've found during the week. A lot of it which we already have because it's been a busy week. But yeah, this has been our little football Super League topic video. I don't know how, if this is going to be a discussion. I don't know if this is going to be like a something we carry on if big events come on. I assume we will, if there's anything we feel like we can talk about.
It may not be more of a regular thing like the podcast. It may be as an as and when it happens.
Yeah, we will try and do some more eventually. A few months' time, we might even see some gameplay. Depends on our situations in terms of equipment. But yeah, at the moment, we'll see you on Friday, and enjoy and like us on Twitter and YouTube. Follow us on both. Subscribe. Hit that notification bell as always, and get back to us in the comments or on Twitter or anywhere else you can reach us for any suggestions, any criticism, anything that's constructive at all, whatever you want to see on this channel going forward, and we will see you then.